Hey, what's up? This is Killing for Company. My name is Kellen, and on today's episode, we're giving some praise, well-deserved praise to Matt over at the Dark Path for hitting 1,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Matt. Been a long-time viewer, and for today's episode, he's got a contest going on, a giveaway, and the theme is albums that pair well together. So I've got some here for you, and this is my first real contest or entry that I've done here with the channel, but excited, so here we go. In the background, true to all things Matt and his affection for Atlanta and Boris Records, we're listening to Sadistic Ritual, and this is Visionaire of Death from 2019 off of the one and only Boris Records. It's a co-release with Unspeakable Acts. I don't know if you can see that, but tremendous death thrash out of Atlanta. Really good stuff. I think they share members with a band called Paladin. They're kind of this more of a thrash power metal project, but anyway, Boris Records is great, and Matt's always repping them. I think he, through the years, has sort of sounds like you get to know the Atlanta scene. So anyway, shout out to Boris Records as well. Let's get on with the contest. So, first two here that I'm pairing together is Inter Arma with Sulfur English, and the other one is Outcast Stankonia, and I'll get to my reasons here. So, let's start with Outcast. When Equimini came out, I must have been, so it was 13 going on 14, because this came out in 1998, and it still resonates with me. Obviously, we have a little bit of a southern Atlanta sort of theme going on here, and that's kind of where my head was with this first pairing, is just pioneering artists from the South. I don't really know how much I need to explain the importance of Outkast at this point. This is a huge band, so I don't really want to go into depth talking about the importance of Equimini. Just for people who may not know, like, at this point in time, Southern hip hop, is primarily like, when I think the first pioneering groups, you don't think of Atlanta necessarily. I primarily think out of Houston, Texas, with the Ghetto Boys, and depending on how important you consider groups like Two Live Crew, etc. I mean, it was not quite as fully fleshed out as a regional contribution to the genre of hip hop. I mean, Outkast is really the first group, in my opinion, where like the vocabulary that defines Southern hip hop really expands and becomes something its own, in a way that the groups that had came before them were not able to do. It definitely seemed heavily rooted or influenced by the West Coast and the East Coast. So I can tell you so many like middle school dances when Rosa Parks came on. It was such a big hit. I probably Spody Odie Dopalicious Angel is probably one of my favorite hip hop songs of all time. And even called a hip hop song is a bit of an odd statement, but just because so much of it is almost like spoken word poetry. But I love this record, and a defining group for the South, for Atlanta specifically, right? And that kind of spills into the next pick that I had here for you with Inter Arma, right? Like, this is not the first Southern sludge project by any means, but they've really taken so many things that have defined Southern sludge to a different place. I mean, and it has been building, obviously, right? Like, so you think about the New Orleans scene and I Hate God and Crowbar, etc. But I don't, this is also coming in the same sort of spirit that a band like Neurosis is. And there were, in the 2000s, a lot of bands that when post-metal and sludge started to share a lot of the same space, it really turned me off. I got burnt out on it. And I think in a lot of ways people consider that to be like doorman metal of this point, like, which is to some degree a denigrating way to describe it, and probably too dismissive to be accurate, but it just no longer it pulls me in at the same consistent level that it did at the beginning of the 2000s per se. Inter Arma is kind of an exception for that. Like, this is blackened sludge, death metal with post-metal elements. There's so many subgenres that they're sort of tackling in this. It's also bringing a different kind of Southern flair to it as well. Like, the quieter passages here, the like acoustic moments in this seem uniquely Southern in a way that's not really, was not, into my mind, sort of tapped into with the sort of first onset of Southern sludge coming out of that New Orleans scene. So they've been at it for a while, and just like Outkast, like, is a huge group, right? Like, sludge does not have the same reach that hip hop does in terms of like mass appeal, but this, metal does need sort of people to be at the forefront of the genre, and even if my time or interest with them is passing before they potentially move on to something else, like Mastodon did, for example, this is a band that's right now, to me, like, at their peak, and as to whether you think Sulphur English is the best they've ever put out, it's probably your opinion may vary, but it deserves to be part of the conversation, and maybe one of the best American sludge bands doing it right now. This is a great album. On Relapse Records, one of the few bands that are still on Relapse that I really, really enjoy listening to. Anyway, so that's our first pair with sort of our theme in here is important and influential bands, past and present, from the South. There we go. First pair. Okay. One of the things about Matt's channel is he just is so unapologetic about the stuff that he does. Like, like, he'll do a deep dive into Christian death, and the opening line is like, if you're here for extreme metal, fuck off. Like, I've got other stuff that I want to talk about, and he's done, because you have done, Matt, so much in terms of just opening yourself into how diverse your musical tastes are with your audience. Like, it's something I would, is inspiring to me, and hopefully will show up on this pairing. So we'll keep it going here. This next one is sort of, to me, spiritual opponents, what still, like, two records that sort of search for the divine, but in opposite paths. So the first one we'll talk about here is a black metal project out of France. This is Drasticist with La Crue de Sang. Just nothing but pure venom here. And one of the things that these two records share is the how inactive the projects were prior, between their first, or not their first, but their previous full length and the current full length that the one I'll be showing at least. So it was an EP released by Drasticist in 2009, and the first full length in 2006. And basically a one-man project, and I remember reading in an interview that he felt that the previous releases were a bit too ambient, and so from 2009 to 2019, when The Crew the Song was released, I believe 2009 was The Serpent's Chalice, that was the name of the EP. There was so much ambient space in that that he hoped that this project would be a bit more coherent and sort of action-packed. There wouldn't be a lot of space to explore. It would be a whole lot more action going on, plenty of intensity to enjoy, and this is just nothing but malice from a black metal project. It's got an intensity to it that really speaks to me, and how aggressive I enjoy my black metal at times. And then it just one of those things to show you that instead of trying to keep pace with like some arbitrary sense of when an album should or should not be released, this project was allowed to breathe for a decade, and that's for the EP, much less 14 years between two LPs. So this is absolutely a kind of self-exploration, looking to destroy any sort of secular law, interpersonal sort of destruction of all things ego, and hope that through that kind of personal violence that you can sort of explore and leave what so much of the world tells you what should and shouldn't be, and that's kind of like a theme that's throughout black metal, is trying to leave so much of what society tells you should be, and you kind of have to make those discoveries for yourself. That's how at least what resonates with me with the genre, and what I get out of it. Anyway, this is there apparently was some exploration with psychedelics in the process of making this. I cannot attest to that beyond just rumor, but it is nasty, intense black metal, and served as an interesting counterweight to this next record. D'Angelo and the Vanguard, Black Messiah. So this comes, the wait on this. So another 14-year wait. I believe 2000 is when Voodoo was released by D'Angelo, and that was like another album that really defined my adolescence, if you will. But nice gatefold here. But that part of like a spiritual opponent, like this is an album that is very much interested in not in sort of a sense of personal destruction, but providing direction and purpose. So D'Angelo, after the success of Voodoo and all sorts of critical acclaim, he's, in my opinion, the defining sort of like soul artist of his generation. And I feel like that is my generation because I was in high school when that record came, when Voodoo came out. He had all sorts of problems with substance abuse, and just sort of fell apart. And because it was so successful, there was a lot of interest as to what he would potentially do next. And it never happened. It took him, 14 years. So there's another connection between the Drasticist project and D'Angelo. It lasted forever. If I don't know how much of that was pressure that he felt he had to live up to, or just problems he had personally with substance use and mental health. But it took him, 14 years to release this record, and goddamn, it's a great comeback. He's got a whole new set of sessions for Voodoo, there's a whole group of people who were in the studio together during the making of that record, and so he had to make sure that the quality of musicianship would be equal to the task that he had established from the previous record. And it's here, it's great. Like some of these songs, it's incendiary at times. It comes right on the heels of what was happening with Black Lives Matter. He's at the same time, you think about Occupy Wall Street. I mean, everything that had happened in terms of social and political unrest from 2000 to when this is released in 2014. What was happening in Ferguson, I think this was around this time. So, in Missouri, there was a whole lot of social pressure, I think, at least what he felt, to come out and speak to that. And this record does it. But then there's songs on this record that are also just spiritually uplifting. Like it's also him sort of finding a place, for some degree of peace personally for this. I love "Betray My Heart." Like that is a great song. And it speaks to, in a different way, like the Charade or 1,000 Deaths, that are definitely speaking to social political issues. In that sense, it's a very three-dimensional glimpse as to what his life has been in the decade plus since Voodoo. So, anyway, all things evil, venomous with drasticist, spiritual death, and attempt for spiritual purpose. So that's my pairing there. Okay. Next one, here's a little bit less serious. This one goes out to the ping pong table that was mentioned, I believe, in one of your videos. But I just remember being in school at the time and definitely not being in class as much. Hold on, let me flip this record. Anyway, so I remember being in school and probably not going to class as much as I should. But here we have two records that we didn't play a lot of ping pong, but we did play plenty of beer pong, whatever. Fucked around, didn't go to class, whatever. There's plenty of that when I was in school, but two records that were played commonly in the house that I live with my friends. So first one is this is Mediocre Generica by Leftover Crack. So former members of Choking Victim. This is a sort of hardcore ska crust band, but man, the last song here, Born to Die, is a Choking Victim song, and we would sing that at the top of our lungs. I believe this was meant to be titled like Shoot the Kids at School or something like that, and they had to change the title to the album because of its sort of what was happening, and I guess the record label thought, this is on Hellcat Records, the record label thought that would be a bit too controversial. This is 2001, so just in the wake of everything that's happening at like Columbine, and I'm from Eugene, Oregon, so Thurston High School with Kip Kinkle, that happened. I was in middle school when that happened, so to have an album titled that, you could tell that they are not afraid of political controversy, and some of these songs, Nazi White Trash, Gay Rude Boys Unite. It's just one of these super political records that, at the time, you have everything that's happening with the George W. Bush administration and the War on Terror. This was a super political record, and me and my house mates loved this record. So I have probably listened to Born to Die 5 billion times, but still love it. It takes me back to a time when I was in school that was really important to me and meant a lot. And then another one, a bit different. This is Beirut with Gulag Orchestra. So I believe Zach Condon is the main person behind this project, and his family is from Russia, but lived in New Mexico. This album was made in Brooklyn, New York, and it's all like Eastern European instruments, but kind of funneled through a indie rock sensibility. So it didn't sound like a lot of the indie rock that I was listening to in the 2000s when I was in school, just because it had this like Eastern European flair to it. The horn arrangements, there's like these martial sort of slow movement to the drums. So it's got like this procession that goes throughout the entire album, but at the same time it has like, if you were listening to Jens Lechman or something like that, you'd recognize, I think Neutral Milk Hotel is the one they got comparison to, but it's just so Eastern European. It's a different kind of folk exploration, at the same time being kind of rockish, but at the same time also very like old world. The instrumental part of it, no one else in the house had anything quite like this. Like, we weren't exploring Eastern European folklore and traditional songs. So when we put this on, it would like circulate. Everyone who I was, sharing a house with, like, dug it because we had no sort of bias against it. But at the same time, it was compelling enough to where we kept on repeating it, and all thought it was really cool. So 2005, I believe, 2005. Really cool record, Beirut, Gulag Orchestra. Okay, next up. I think, Matt, you dig sci-fi, so I got Cryptic Shift here, and this is a picture disc. I was just going to hold this up for the artwork. I think this got a lot of praise last year in 2020. A release, Blood Harvest did an awesome job with this, but this is like death thrash, so Ripping Corpse, Chemical Breath, but at the same time, like Time Ghoul and Blood Incantation is like definitely playing in that space. People who love that kind of death metal with cosmic themes, but this is definitely a bit more in the death thrash place. You probably have seen this circulating, but if you haven't, I can't recommend it enough. The opening track's in 6 different movements, I believe, and this spans about 25 minutes. So it's got like a little bit of a, vector, voivod, sort of progressive side to it, but very cool. But this project here, so this is Dracar Sauna. I think they're originally from Lawrence, Kansas. And this is a crazy, another concept record, sci-fi concept record, but this is like, if Cryptic Shift is the voyage in the future for space life, like this is like you land and you are confronted with what now. One of my favorite lines from this record is, it's kind of like a folk record, so the lyrics is a central piece to this, and it's the line goes, the last thing we need is one more place, but since we're committed to the premise, why not space? And it's just full of humor, and it almost plays out, I don't know if you know the Limelighters or any sort of like 1960s folk group, where like their vocal arrangements are almost like inspired by roots music as much as they are gospel. But the songs are about like a planet where nothing but androgens live and have hundreds of words for amputee but don't know how to express love. A unborn child who in a metaphysical realm thanks his mother for aborting him before he was born. Anyway, it's really weird in that regard, but it's hilarious, and the more like No ideas about the king, but the king himself is a bit more like a serious, attempt lyrically. It's not a joke record. They just have a sense of humor that's almost like sci-fi and Violet Femmes. It's like a darker sense of humor, right? So anyway, that's Dracar Sauna, and this came out, I want to say, in 2009. I could be wrong about that. Maybe 2008. And the album is 2009. So anyway, last pairing here for you. So the first one is the Transcendence Orchestra, and this is like a lo-fi electronic ambient project. The entire time sounds like you are on the sort of precipice or walking a thin line, and then it's sort of unending, right? Like you're on this precipice, and the dynamics never get too intense because it's an ambient electronica record. So you just sort of live on the edge, but grow to be at peace there. So it's entertaining enough; it keeps you, dialed in and paying attention. But the idea here is that it's sort of you live on that fringe and just get to be at peace with it, right? It's like a perpetual sense of dawn. It's very light in tenor. It doesn't get too dark at any point in time. And I think lockdown had a lot to do with this. This group's out of Scotland, and most of this record was written while sort of stuck inside during lockdown. So it was almost like a way to explore the outside world in a search for something a bit more lighthearted, while sort of confined to the indoors, and you had sort of the limitations to the world around you. If you could see like a new day, a new light on the outside, that slow entrance and a sort of a dawn coming over sort of the precipice into a new day, it would sound like this record. So that paired with the Waste of Space Orchestra. So this is after you've lived on the precipice, sort of a slow, psychotic descent into psychedelic black metal and doom. Waste of Space Orchestra is a combination of Oranzi Pazuzu and Dark Buddha Rising. So Dark Buddha Rising is sort of the doom element, and Oranzi Pazuzu, you're probably familiar with them. They're sort of like a psychedelic, experimental, avant-garde black metal project. They, I guess, came together, and it's a crew, man. Like, it is. See if I can pull up. Like, here's that they're all in the studio together putting this out. But it's interesting in the sense, like, they work so well together. The doom and sludge part that the Dark Buddha Rising provides, there's some element that you can like hold on to it, right? It becomes tangible to some degree, but the psychedelic elements and all of the Oranzi Pazuzu sort of waves of synths and strange drifting vocals that are paired with the more aggressive black and doom vocals, all of that sort of shifts things on their axis, so you're never quite steady. As soon as you land somewhere, the room sort of leans in one direction and you're off kilter once again. It's enjoying that kind of disorientation, and this was, I think, Spark Records 2019 as well. The Transcendence Orchestra is a 2020 release, so in recent years, but here's sort of complete at peace with a sense of tension and your meditation on the edge of things, and then this is a complete descent into chaos and a perpetual sort of centrifugal motion that you can really enjoy the ride. So I would start with this, and then I would sort of, once you had sort of exhausted with the lack of dynamic tension, transition into something like wasted space orchestra. So that's my pairing there for you. Some minimalist ambient electronica and experimental avant-garde black with black metal with doom metal and sludge metal going on. So some pretty weird stuff to close out this. That's what I got for you. Congratulations, Matt. I can't say enough good things about your channel. You're a major inspiration in terms of how you decided to really just let go of any kind of expectation and be yourself, put out the content that you love putting out, and not being concerned about what you can and can't do on a channel that's primarily focused on extreme metal. It's a completely refreshing viewing to watch your videos and see just the depth of your music knowledge and exactly where your tastes take you and have evolved over the years. Been incredibly open, sort of sharing your musical journey and story. So thank you so much for all that you continue to contribute to the community. You deserve 1,000 more. I'll be there to congratulate you when you get it, but that's all I got for you. I'll see you later. This is Killing for Company, and next time, bye.